The Washington County Quorum Court is now called to session. Good evening. Happy March to you. I see quite a few people are donned in their green attire. We got March 17 coming on Saturday. Happy St. Patty's Day. At this point, we want to invite the public to come up and visit with us. If there's some things you want to share. Oh, before we go to prayer and pledge, can we go ahead, Justice Lundstrom, lead us in the prayer and pledge?
Join me in prayer. Our precious Heavenly Father, we come before the throne of grace tonight, as usual, asking that you would superintend over this meeting. Give us the wisdom that's required to make intelligent and logical decisions for the people of Washington County. But we're especially heavy-hearted tonight, Father, over the children that were slain in Broward County, Florida. We ask that your mercy and grace might be poured abundantly upon those families that are suffering from the loss of a child. We pray also for those that were injured, wounded in the hospital. Ask for your healing grace might touch them. And as always, we want to pray for our law enforcement all over the United States. Our country in the last few years has taken a very dramatic turn where we now have our children killing their classmates. So we ask, Father, that you would give us the wisdom to do what's necessary to stop this foolishness. We ask these things tonight, Father, in Christ's name and for his sake. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, J.P. Lundstrom. Now, citizen comments. Any citizen comments? Okay, we'll go ahead to the adoption of the agenda. Justice Madison.
Thank you, Mr. Judge. I have a correction to the agenda. The last item, I don't know which item it is. The item that is on second reading, I believe properly, is only on first reading because the ordinance was not read at the last meeting.
The last item, which one is, would you, the carryover?
No. It's 8.1. It says it's on second reading and properly it can only be on first reading because it was not read at our last meeting. I have watched the videotape over and over on that section.
And I didn't read that?
Chairman Ussery never asked for it to be read. The county attorney never read it. You referred to it once and said it had been read and referred to it and said, you know, the one with 8,000. But it was the one with 8,606. So the ordinance was not read. And to complicate matters even more, we never did suspend the rules to read ordinances by title only that night. And I usually do that, but we had J.P. Ecke that wanted to make some comments, and then we sort of immediately moved into the consent agenda and the agenda. So it complicates things a little bit, and I don't know truly how to solve all of it, but I know that one should only be on first reading.
And I don't have, obviously, Ms. Patty, how we, was that, again, I know I thought I read that, but again, I don't, without.
You did refer to it and say it had been read and then did a cursory reading of it, but it wasn't accurate because you said $8,000 and it wasn't $8,000. So maybe our attorney can tell us what the fix is for all this.
Well, let me ask Ms. Patty, do you have any of the minutes from and how that piece, how I read that or? Well, I know that you had read it. Once you read the whole amount. Say it again. Hit your microphone, Ms. Patty.
You were the one that read it, and to the best of my knowledge, I thought that you read all of it because I was watching to make sure, because I knew that county attorney did not.
Sure. So I will take the pleasure of the court, but I thought I read it.
You did.
Okay.
Excuse me. You did read it. You referred to it as having been read, and there was some confusion whether we were doing the one with the 8,606 or the 7,000. Remember, it was split into 10.1 and 10.2. And Chairman Usry started with the one that was 7,000 and then decided it should be the one with 8,000. And that's the way you referred to it when you read through it. You said, oh, yeah, that's one we read, and it refers this and this and $8,000. So you read it, but you didn't read it verbatim because you read it wrong.
Justice Bond.
Yes, sir. Thank you. If that's the only thing that's troubling anyone, I might suggest that we read it once tonight and then possibly suspend the rules and read it another time by title only.
I'm okay with that, but again, it has to be approved. Justice Madison.
Let me just clarify. I'm trying to correct the agenda.
Sure.
Is all I'm really trying to do right now.
Sure. So, how would you make that? What's your?
That item, number 8, that says this ordinance is on its second reading, it should say this ordinance is on its first reading.
Justice Pond, that kind of speaks, and then if there's a motion to move to read or suspend the rules, then we can do that. Any comments, questions on that particular change?
Then
All right, so you
we
move that?
adopt the agenda with that correction.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that would be including the consent agenda items?
Well, excuse me. The minutes need correcting then.
With the same, gotcha.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and make your motion again to say.
All right. I move that the consent agenda be adopted with the minutes pulled from the agenda.
With that change in there. You second that?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All opposed? All right, so we have the adoption of the agenda with the correction as well as the change in the minutes, Ms. Patty. Justice Harbison, 6.1.
We have a lady here from the planning board to bring us up to date.
Get your microphone, Ms. Harbison. Judge Harbison.
To bring us up to date on the feasibility study of open space, and I understand that she was only bringing us up to date, and she'll introduce herself. I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Elizabeth Bowen with the Northwest Arkansas Regional Planning Commission. I want to thank you for allowing me to come and take up a little bit of your time tonight. I'm here tonight to talk about the continued implementation of the Northwest Arkansas Open Space Plan. This is a plan that was adopted by our commission, which is made up of the 2 county judges and the 32 mayors in the region, as well as some other membership. I came before you on September 21st asking for a recommendation that the judge be allowed to request the feasibility study for open space funding. This was just a request to allow us to obtain information on what the possibilities might be for funding the open space plan. The intent was, when I met with you in September, was that the company that did the study would come back and present the study. The person that prepared the study has taken a promotion within the company and is unable to come, and no one is able to come until after May. I had told you I would be here in January, February timeframe. I did not want to postpone that until May, so I wanted to get the study in your hands. Be able to allow you to ask any questions. I most likely will not be able to answer many of them, but I will take those questions down and get you a written answer from the company. So the study itself was provided to you in your packet. We are just gathering information at this point. The next step, as I described previously, would be to poll the citizens and find out what they think about the possibilities of funding an open space plan with one of the possible options that we're mentioned in that document. And there were many options, mentioned. They were supposed to prepare and let us know what all the options might be. So I just wanted to bring that study to you and allow you to ask questions, and I would try to get any answers that you might have. So.
JP Nash.
When the newspaper called me about this being on our agenda tonight, I thought, well, we all should have a noble goal of trying to conserve land as there's so much development and growth. But I also said, get in line. And I'm not sure that this is the best body to be coming to asking us for revenue sources, because until the state gets its act together on the funding for our jails and our criminal justice system, we don't have the luxury of affording anything like green space. We just don't. And it's certainly not something that I would make as a priority. But if we're going to even be considering a tax increase of some kind, it's going to have to go to the things that are mandatory that we do. And number one on that list being an expensive jail. And so I just felt like it was important to get that out there, that I don't want to mislead you. It's what you're doing is good work. It's noble. I can't see this court being able to do that until the state gets its act together, frankly. And so maybe you all need to be trying to tell the state that they shouldn't be cutting taxes when they're basically passing the buck on to the counties to try to raise taxes to deal with necessities. So I just feel very strongly that the state is leaving counties all over the state in a horrible position. And everybody then comes to us. When the state cuts everybody, they come to us. The public defenders come to us. 4-H comes to us. The jail has to come to us. And we end up always footing the bill, and we have a huge deficit to overcome. So I think y'all need to be laying a lot more of this groundwork at the state level. And until the governor and the legislature signs on to this, I don't think it's realistic to expect counties to do this. I'm really sorry. So that's just wanted to speak my piece. Thank you, Judge.
J.B. Harbison.
I was a little bit confused by the newspaper article because I didn't think that was the purpose of Elizabeth coming tonight. I thought the purpose was for her to come. What we did was that we gave her permission to go on and do the feasibility study. And at that time, nothing was said about any kind of funding or anything. So I was surprised when the newspaper came out with the article as saying that the county would be funding something. I know you'll be looking for revenue at some point, but we have a lot of other entities that are involved in this. And so I was really surprised. I don't know where that information came from. Maybe you could enlighten us a little bit. Thank you.
So when I read the newspaper article, in the executive summary, it looked like the article was quoting that the possibility of a sales tax and how much it would be, that type of thing, which the study does say, the sales tax, the bond issue, transfer tax. I mean, it lists a long range of possibilities, and that's what the intent of the study was, to tell us what are the possibilities for open space, water conservation, easements, all of those types of things. So.
J.B. Harbison.
This is the first time that I have seen the study. So, I did not know what was in the study. I was going on by the information of when you came to ask permission to do the feasibility study. Thank you.
Any other discussion, questions? Any other comments, Ms. Boland?
Nope. We'll go ahead and go on with the next step, and I may be back to provide you additional information. So.
And I think we had this conversation. I don't know if that would, when you first came, was that at a committee meeting, or was that here at the Quorum Court?
So I think I've been here 5 times, but the last time was at the Quorum Court, September 21st. Previous to that was at a committee where I gave probably a 30-minute presentation about the plan and all the possibilities and what we were doing, actively trying to get easements, purchase properties
And I think that's where we want to obviously make sure that the committees get a chance to really walk through and see whatever it is that you're going to present.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, JPs? Thank you, Ms. Bowen.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate that. JP Madison.
I didn't want to intrude on Ms. Bowen, but we didn't really approve the minutes, so I would approve the minutes. Move that we approve the minutes with that little correction, and then I have another motion after that. Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Unless we forget tonight, I move that we suspend the rules and read all ordinances by title only.
It's been moved that we suspend the rules.
Second.
Been properly second. Read by title only. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed?
No.
Okay. JP Madison.
Speaking of the minutes, I was looking back earlier in the year, and we don't have minutes available for all of our meetings. And I couldn't tell where we even approved minutes for all of our meetings. So I felt that irregularity should be pointed out. It was mostly the beginning of the year. But JP Devins is relieved. She wasn't here. It's not on her.
You're talking about January?
January, February.
Of this year?
No, sorry, last year.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it was early last year.
Okay.
And then there's a lot of things that are really incomplete, like just months where there's not anything available. So I just think somebody needs to make sure that everything's there, and that if we have failed somehow to do minutes, we obviously need to have them, because that stands as our official record.
We'll go back and verify. I know Ms. Patty has gone through and redone, made sure she looked back and what was going on before she came in office. Okay, Ms. Patty, can we look at that and just send a note out to the JPs? Because I know you did a lot of work going back and making sure we got up to speed on whatever was there. So we passed that. We're on item number 7, Judge Report. A few things I just want to bring up. We were at I had opportunity to go to the NACO. Last month I was in the Association of County where all the judges. This month I was at the National Association of Counties, where they bring board supervisors, or what they call county judges, here in Arkansas, board supervisors in other states. We were in D.C. And spent a few days there, meeting with legislators and listening and working through issues that are going across the country. I won't go through all of them because there's so much going on, but namely infrastructure. Clearly, the president has talked a lot about rebuilding the country, and he's put a lot of emphasis on infrastructure, in particular roads, bridges. As the economy grows, in particular, and we talk about our area, that becomes a lot of construction, a lot of building. That means those roads get used, those bridges get used, and a lot of tractor trailers, semi-trucks move on those, and they're going to cause more damage to those roads and bridges, far more than even the cars. And so the Congress has spent a lot of time and energy looking at infrastructure bills for roads and bridges. And so that falls further down into a discussion around PILT, which is the payment in lieu of taxes, which is normally in your areas and counties where they have a lot of federal lands, Bureau of Land Management, natural water, where the federal government helps pay not property taxes, but they'll give some type of payment in way of saying, thanks for maintaining this. We know that these are public access, public parks, public what have you, and there still has to be maintenance taken care of, fire, safety, et cetera. And so the question and the fight the Congress has taken up is, how do we make sure that those type of good faith efforts happen by the federal government, that they don't take all the payment from that, because counties are looking at it. They still have to take care of those roads and bridges getting to those publicly used areas. Some states do that as well. States who have large state lands, state institutions. Here in our area, in our county, we have a lot of tax-exempt entities, in particular our university, and a lot of facilities that are on the university that are I guess that claim that tax exempt. So that's property taxes that we don't get. But yet we still have to take care of the roads and maintain a lot of the stuff that these tax-exempt entities reside on. So there's discussion, and I'll be visiting with legislators as well. How do we look at entities like that doing something? They're not paying property taxes, but can they do something in way of saying, just like the pilot, the PILT payment in lieu of taxes, here's our good faith to say, we understand we're not going to pay the full property assessed tax values, but we can do something knowing that you guys are still responsible for taking care of the roads, et cetera. So that was a big topic of discussion in Congress, which also then led into, obviously, the big two that we have here in our state, which is jails, regional jails, and then opioids. The Congress is now working with a $6 billion budget that has been earmarked for them to look at these crises across the country. The question now becomes, how do they divvy that, and who's going to receive some of those dollars, the $6 billion that's allocated for the next year and a half, I guess it is. I think the idea is that it will be those states and governors that have already started working toward it. They have started doing something in way of reducing the amount of people who are in crisis, looking at trying to reduce the amount of people who are in jail. And so Arkansas, I think, is poised to receive and be part of the discussion as Congress wrestles with how they spend and send some of those dollars across the country. And so we're kind of on the cutting edge as far as pushing with our crisis stabilization unit and looking at how do we reduce some of the folks who are in our jails. I think here in Washington County we have about 25% of our people who are in our jails on drugs or in some form or fashion with the opioids. And so this crisis stabilization unit is going to kind of help that. And so, again, this is not just an Arkansas phenomenon, it's across the country. And so, again, $6 billion has been now in Congress's hand trying to figure out how they pass that out. And so that was a big discussion. Obviously, the jails continue to be a matter of discussion because are these just warehouses for those who are, and we're at 25% here, but in some other parts of our county, we got people who are in jail at 30 and 40% of their jail population on drugs. So I think Arkansas ranks number 2 with the number of people on prescription drugs. For per capita, that's a lot. When you're number 2 in the country for the number of prescription per capita. And so we do have a major issue, a major problem here. And so we're working toward that. Our crisis stabilization unit still has not been pointed out. And again, we had a location, as you guys remember, last fall. We were looking at Northwest Arkansas Medical Center, ran into an issue that the Medicaid dollars could not go in if it was a hospital in existence there. So we had to have a standalone or stand-aside entity. And so we started looking at the our property that's being leased to UAMS that we're leasing under the Welcome Health Center, the free health clinic. That was going to cost a pretty good penny, better than $1 million to refurbish and rehab that. And so then we started, well, what are the options? Maybe if we go ahead and build. So we started looking at the property, the parking lot across the street. At the same time, we ended up spending time last month down in Sebastian County watching them open their new crisis stabilization unit. Wow. We can probably do this even better. There's a facility upstairs on the 5th floor of the UAMS, and so we walked over and saw that, and we've been probably moving in a 90-day period. But right now, we're still working with the governor and the folks down in Little Rock because there's a tug of war, if you will, between UAMS and our land and our property. And so we're going to continue to pursue that. Our goal is to have that open this year. We have the governor who's anxious to have all 4 of them open, because, again, that then becomes an opportunity for us to track that data and then begin to replicate that across the state. So that's on the crisis stabilization piece. We had some good sessions, good meetings, and again, J.P. Maxwell, I appreciate him. And again, he's been one of the JPs on the very beginning working with us on this, and got all the JPs to sign on the resolution. And so we met last week with a foundation who's very interested in maybe helping us in that endeavor, again, keeping our footprint low when it comes to costs and expenses. I know the sheriff is also very engaged with this and looking at maybe providing meals and that type of thing, since we already do that for our jail. So we're working hard on trying to get this piece done. It's, again, understanding and identifying the location. So I think very shortly we'll have some resolution on that, whether we build it or go into another place or get UAMS to partner with us with our land. So the last piece I just want to share is that we got some exciting things going on here in our county with Dye Creek. Dye Creek construction will start with a completion date being here in September of 2018. We'll have that completed. and that's been a long time coming. Blue Springs, you guys know that last year we went and temporarily got it open. We're now got the looking at getting the permanent construction done. We'll have the bids go out at the end of the month, and we'll have those bids come back and make a decision in mid-April, and we'll look to have that all completed before Thanksgiving. So that'll be the permanent completion of Blue Springs Road, and then I guess spring of 2019 we'll have Brush Creek done, and Brush Creek was probably the hardest hit of all our roads and bridges from the storms in April. So we got some exciting things moving on there. We got the architectural design work going on for our juvenile detention center and the juvenile court over there, and so we'll have those renderings done, and then we'll start working through that. So a lot going on, but again, got a fantastic team, and with our road departments and working with our partners in engineering and construction. So anyway, we're looking forward to seeing those properties start to come open. So that's what we have in our judge's report. Item number 8 is that JP Ussery.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
could you read this for us, please, Mr. Lester? First thing.
An ordinance appropriating the amount of $8,606 from the general fund to the county attorney budget for 2018.
Okay, and if you'll notice, this ordinance has changed from the original. Originally, there were 2 different components to this. One of those components is gone, and so I move that this be passed as read.
It doesn't have to.
It's been moved properly second. General, well, no. So it's just a discussion then. Go ahead, J.P. Harpison.
Well, I was just asking if this was the first reading.
That's correct.
So, as soon as we finish with this, I'll make a motion that we suspend the rules and read it by title only for the second reading.
All right, well, we still got discussion. J.P. Dennis? Okay. Other discussion? J.P. Madison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to object somewhat to the language in this ordinance because it says the budget incorrectly omitted $8,606. And I don't know if anybody's owned up to making an error, but that's what was presented, is why it was in the budget that way, and that's the budget we approved. And after the last meeting, I spoke with the previous county attorney, and he confirmed that Mr. Johansson had based his raise for the next year, which he was not able to get, on his past government experience, his military experience, his years of being a practicing attorney, as well as his time being county attorney. So I don't think it necessarily should flow that all of those conditions that were considered for his raise should flow to the next county attorney. And we have so many expensive items facing us. I mean, funding this crisis center, the jail, and this is not a huge sum of money in the scheme of things, but we seem to be getting these small requests early in the year before we really know what all is ahead of us. I mean, we could have a manhunt, we could have a flood, we could have all kinds of problems, and it just concerns me when this was approved just months ago. Thank you, Judge.
All right. J.P. Devins.
I remember when we had this discussion, I think it was at the committee meeting, and the questions that went around were whether this raise was given based on market value. And based on the rest of your comments, you stated that there was a 5% raise given, I think, across the board to raise the gentleman that had it prior to that to market value. My question then and my statement now, if that raise was given to raise the position to market value, what's changed? If it was at market value, why can't this person still have that job? Forgive me for my ignorance of not being here back when that happened. I think back in 2016 or something like that is when this occurred. And so I think it would behoove all of us to go back and look at those minutes and see what the purpose of was us passing that at that time.
J.P. Madison.
I know some of us, this was actually discussed in 2016 or the 2017 budget. And that year we underwent a very different process with respect to employee raises. We had previously considered sort of across the board uniform, either everybody gets 50 cents an hour or everybody gets 3%. And Mr. Johansson always comes to us and tells us how out of whack we are and how off market we are. And so in 2016, we undertook a different process where we actually looked at each person in the position and evaluated them, not just market. Market was one of the factors evaluated, but it was also like time in position, experience level. I think a lot of the factors that most employers would look at when trying to set pay appropriately, some of it, but not all of it, was a market effort. And there were a wide range of raises that year. I think there was someone at the library system that got like a 17% raise because that person was so off from where they should have been. Everyone that year got a minimum of 5%. So, but I think that the issue though was there was factored in who was in the position and what time, because that position still has a starting salary, and then there's a range. My understanding is, I know that position is outside of JSAP's normal procedures, but there is a range that you can come in at the minimum, you can come in at the maximum, or you can come in at the midpoint. And depending on sort of where your expertise falls in that range is where you would come in. So I hope that answers some of it.
JP, Deb.
With due respect, I do understand that, but based on the discussion that we had at the committee meeting, the position, when it came in, we reduced it. I realize there may have been error. Well, but at any rate, the question I asked then, was this amount at market value for today? And my understanding, based on your replies, was yes. And one of the things that some of the other departments were doing was saying that, hey, we want to keep our people, we want to keep good people. So that was my argument. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but that was my understanding. I do approve, I support this particular increase, but again, I apologize if I'm misunderstanding something further. But thank you.
JB Bond.
I'm gonna support this ordinance, and what I do want to say is, as far as through the year we determine certain changes need to be made and expenditures, and some of the things that happen when employees retire and new ones come on board, we actually have little savings because they come on for less money. But others, the majority of us might not think that's a good idea for certain positions. And I don't really like the idea of waiting and pushing all of that to budget time and making that the only time we work on this sort of thing. It's easier to give it a lot more care and a lot more thought if we do these things one or two or three at a time as we go through the months than just to wait until we have all that before us all at once. So it creates a lot of confusion. I still can't get my head wrapped around the idea that we send our legislators down to Little Rock, once or twice a year, or once every 2 years, once a year. And one time they go down there, they might pass 3,000 laws and amendments. And I can't see how they really did a proper study and care on that sort of thing. So, I'm just using that for an example. That doesn't have anything to do with this. But I just really don't like the idea of making some kind of idea that we got to do all of this sort of thing within one or 2 months. Thank you.
Thank you, JP Pond. JP Madison.
I've said a lot on this, so I'll be brief, but I go back to two things for why I cannot support this. In January of 2017, Mr. Lester himself advised the newspaper that his salary was set at $70,000. There was no, it was conditional. It was never described to us as conditional. They chose to set it at not the maximum budget rate. The second issue is that Mr. Lester himself signed off on his budget as it came to us. And so for it to be put to us that something incorrect was done with the budget does trouble me as well. And this court voted last year to give every employee a uniform raise, and Mr. Lester would be getting 3 times that. And so that could not have been in the budget without coming through a special process. So whether it's market, whether it's, all that, I don't think we made a mistake. I think someone in the judge's office did. And I just don't think that's our place to have to fix it. I think a deal was struck. Maybe the deal was regretted. But sometimes you got to live with those things. We need to be saving money everywhere we can. And all these little things that we've been approving to already adjust last year's budget are going to add up very significantly. And when it comes time later in this year for us to look at the issue of employee raises, how many folks are going to remember that we gave the county attorney an almost 10% raise? I'll have a hard time looking at other employees saying, gosh, we're not even sure we can afford to give you 2% given that. So thank you, Judge.
J.P. Ostrom.
I'm not completely sure of the number, but it's my estimation that these raises that have come up right here at the beginning of the year are going to amount to somewhere around $25,000 or $30,000 for the year. These things add up because you've got all your benefits that go along with the raise, Social Security, retirement, etc. So these are things we have to look at when we deal with these numbers because they're generally a lot larger than they look on this piece of paper by the end of the year. Thank you, Mr. Judge.
J.P. Harbison.
If I understand this situation, was that the judge made a recommendation, and somehow that recommendation did not get in the budget process. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And now you are trying to correct the recommendation that you made.
That's correct.
Okay. I'm going to support this because I think it's the right thing to do. I think a mistake was made. It doesn't matter who made the mistake. We are here to correct it now. Yes, we've got budget issues, but we're going to have to deal with those. This little amount of money that we're talking about, $25,000, is not, and I'm talking about the additional things, too, that we have done, and we'll have other things through the year. So, we need to think about how we're going to take care of this. We should have taken care of it this last year. But some people on this court got cold feet and they didn't want to do what was necessary and do it right. We're not going to rob the road department to do it. All right? So I will support this because it was a mistake somewhere and it needs to be corrected. Thank you.
J.P. Bowman.
Thank you, Judge. You know, one thing that comes to my mind immediately about this whole situation. This year's budget was reduced in the judge's department by $800,000. You know, that's a lot of dollars that came out of the budget this year in his department from the previous year. You know, mistakes are made, and we got to correct the mistakes regardless who made them. And I'm going to support this motion and hope the rest of you will. Thank you.
Public comments. J.P. Dennison.
Thank you, Mr. Judge.
Okay.
When I look at this, I think when I heard J.P. Devins talking, and I agree with what she says, I'm not sure why this wasn't always set up with brackets. If everything else is set up with a bracket from the judge on down, Why is the attorney? I'm not talking about Mr. Lester. I'm just talking about the position. Why did we not have a starting and a high and a midpoint? We do? Okay. So what is that bracket? Does anybody know? The
I don't
amount?
have it. I don't know what that is.
The low and the high?
I don't know what it is.
I don't want to do this. I feel like it's out of order.
I don't
That's
know
out
what
of
it
order?
is. We can find that out.
Oh, okay. Well, I sure wouldn't want to ask anything
Do you
out of
have-
order.
JP
But I am
Dennis, hold
curious
tight.
as to what the bracket is.
I don't know what it is. JP Dennis, do you know? JP Madison?
I wasn't, JP Dennis, I wasn't saying you were out of order. I felt like me responding to you in a dialogue was out of order. So I didn't want to engage in that without the judge's permission. And he is asking me to do that. The minimum was $70,000, and then it was raised to the whatever it was for Mr. Zaga. And then my understanding was it went back to the minimum. But it's the judge's discretion as the hiring manager to set it at whatever he wants. I mean, he could have hired somebody at $40,000, or he could have come to us and said, I want you to approve a budget of $100,000. And then we have to make that decision.
So, well, I hate to do it out of order, but at the same, may I address?
Okay, sure.
So what is the, I just want to know the brackets. I don't know, I don't want anything about Lester or Zaga. What is the bracket? What's the low and what's the high?
It would have to be, that would have to come from Mr. Johansson. I don't know it.
Okay.
I don't think some of those professional classifieds don't have that. It becomes exactly that. You can bring them in as low as
Okay.
or as high as long as it's been approved. So,
Well, thank you. I'll just go ahead and say, speak from the heart. I would hate that I think that I prepared myself in law school for that many years, and $70,000 is what I would come out making. I can do better in the grocery business than I can that, and with very little education. So to me, it seems like our bracket is a problem, not the mistake that was made or what we think or don't think. The bracket should be corrected, and this is one way, I guess, to correct you're trying to correct the bracket or correct the mistake. I understand that, but shame on us for not having a bracket set. So thank you.
okay. Any other discussion? JP Ussery.
No, there's no vote.
There's none. It just,
Second reading.
it's either go to third reading next month unless it's a suspension.
No, well, it was my understanding that we were starting from scratch because of what happened
That's
last
correct.
week.
Nope.
So
Point
we
of
just
order.
need to vote.
It's an appropriation ordinance, so it doesn't actually go to second reading unless it doesn't get 10 votes on the first time. So it actually does go up for a vote on first reading, as any
Which
other
is-
appropriation ordinance would.
Which is what JP, okay, JP
If it
Ussery.
garners 10 votes, that's
Then
it.
it's done.
If it doesn't garner 10 votes,
Then
then we
goes.
have to either advance it on supermajority to second reading, or then it advances to second reading at the next
month.
meeting.
That's correct. So JP Ussery, what's your pleasure? What's your motion?
I'm sorry, I thought I made the motion.
You did.
I made the motion at the beginning. I said I make a motion.
Was that you who seconded
And it was
it? All right, so it's been
seconded, yes.
moved and properly second.
Yes, sir.
Ordinance, the appropriation ordinance on 8.1. Ms. Patty, you want to go ahead and do the roll call?
Now let's do public comment.
No, you already called public comment. Nobody came.
Did we, Ms. Patty? I'd ask for public comment. Go ahead, Ms. Patty. Roll call.
Harvey Bowman. Yes. Alicia Devins. Yes. Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Ann Harbison.
Yes.
Joe Kiklak.
No.
Tom Lindstrom.
No.
Eva Madison.
No.
Sue Madison.
No.
Joel Maxwell.
Yes.
Butch Pond.
Yes.
Fred Roush.
Yes.
Bill Ussery.
Yes.
Daniel Balls.
No.
Sorry.
Okay, so that was, I don't know what the count number was. A5, so then that moves to the second reading.
So I move that we suspend the rules and then read by title only and then do the second reading.
Move for a second reading.
I call for the orders of the day.
State your pleasure. No, ask him to state your
Well, hold on. Let's make sure I got what was your motion was to move for a second reading. Yours was to state.
Let's move to item 9, then where's the today?
favor to move to item 9. So vote of hands.
All right. So vote of hands. All in favor of moving off of item 8 to move to item 9.
Wait a minute, I'm confused.
So Justice Keeklike is asked to move on to the next item. JP Usry has already put a second motion on, so it's almost a motion.
It's a privilege motion.
Just go.
So you have to vote on his first.
And then we go back
before
to
you can
JP
go back
Usry's.
to JP Usry's.
So
Did he get?
move to item 9. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? No. Ms. Patty?
Harvey Bowman,
Yes.
Alicia Devins,
Hold on. So sorry. I'm not sure what I'm voting on this
Okay.
very second. I think he wants to move to item 9.
And yes.
I'm saying no.
Okay.
Robert Dennis,
No.
Ann Harbison, Joe Kicklack,
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom,
Yes.
Eva Madison,
Yes.
Sue Madison, Joel Maxwell,
No.
Butch Pond,
No.
Fred Roush,
No.
Bill Usry,
No.
Daniel Balls.
Yes.
Okay, Miss. What's that number? What's the count number? 8-5. All right, JP Usry.
6.
1, 2, 3,
7,
4,
6,
5,
no, yes.
6, 7, 6.
There's a majority on this one.
Right.
Okay,
Does it
so
pass?
JP Usry, you have your motion to go second read. It's been moved and properly second. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? No. Miss Patty?
Harvey Bowman,
Yes.
Alicia Devins, Robert Dennis,
Yes.
Ann Harbison, Joe Kicklack,
No.
Tom Lundstrom,
No.
Eva Madison, Sue Madison, Joel Maxwell,
Yes.
Butch Pond,
Yes.
Fred Roush,
Yes.
Bill Usry,
Yes.
Daniel Balls.
No.
It does not. What was the number? Okay, so it just goes to next month. Item 9, Justice Usry.
Okay, item 9 is
9.1, yes.
what we're doing is that we're making some changes in the environmental department, and we're moving somebody into position that needs to be there. And so I move that this be passed. If you mind, if you would read it.
Turn it on.
An ordinance appropriating the amount of $1,745 from the unappropriated reserves to the Environmental Affairs budget for 2018.
Okay, now I move that this be passed as read.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Okay, we got a second. Any other discussion? Public comments? Public comments? All right, Miss Patty.
Harvey Bowman, Alicia Devins, Robert Dennis,
Yes.
Ann Harbison, Joe Kicklack,
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom,
No.
Eva Madison,
No.
Sue Madison,
Yes.
Joel Maxwell,
Yes.
Butch Pond,
Yes.
Fred Roush,
Yes.
Bill Usry,
Yes.
Daniel Balls.
Yes.
Okay. That one passes. Justice Usry, item 10.1.
Okay. Item 10.1 is for the circuit court, and this is it's a slight increase in the salary to hopefully keep somebody that's a quality person. And I move that this, if you won't mind reading this, please, Mr. Lester.
An ordinance appropriating the amount of $2,128 from the unappropriated reserves to the Circuit Court 3 budget for 2018.
So again, restate which this is a budget increase for a employee.
Yes, we're we want to bring them in at a slightly higher salary based on their qualifications. So I move this be passed as read.
Second.
It's been moved by Justice Usry, seconded by J.P. Pond. Discussion. Discussion. Public comments. Public comments. All right, Ms. Patty.
Harvey Bowman. Alicia Devins. Robert Dennis. Lisa Ecke. Ann Harbison. Joe Kicklack.
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom.
No.
Eva Madison.
Yes.
Sue Madison.
Yes.
Joel Maxwell.
Yes.
Butch Pond.
Yes.
Fred Roush.
Yes.
Bill Usry.
Yes.
Daniel Balls.
Yes.
Okay, that one passes. Justice Usry, 11.1.
11.1 is going in to and fixing last year's budget, and there were a number of changes that need to be made as people came and left from various positions.
I'll read it.
And so it's cleaning up the budget. And so if you would read this for us, please, Mr. Lester.
An ordinance reducing the amount of $844,480 from line items in various county budgets and restoring those funds to unappropriated reserves, and appropriating the total amount of $1,603,975 from the unappropriated reserves to various budget line items for 2017.
So I move that this be passed as read.
Moved by Justice Usry, second by J.P. Sue Madison. Any discussion? No discussion. Any discussion? All right, public comments. Public comments, Ms. Patty?
Harvey Bowman.
Yes.
Alicia Devins.
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Ann Harbison. Joe Kicklack.
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom.
Yes.
Eva Madison.
Yes.
Sue Madison. Joel Maxwell.
Yes.
Butch Pond.
Yes.
Fred Roush.
Yes.
Bill Usry.
Yes.
Daniel Balls.
Yes.
Okay, and that one passes. Justice Usry, 12.1.
Okay, 12.1 is taking the amount of money that was left in each department from their budget and moving that over into the revenues and bringing them over into the unappropriated reserves. And so again, this is just cleaning up last year's funds. So I move that this be passed as read. Have you read it yet? Go ahead and read it. I'm sorry.
An ordinance adjusting carryover revenues in various funds for 2018.
Okay,
So
we
I
got the
move-
motion.
So I move that this be passed as read.
Moved by Justice Usry, second by Justice Sue Madison. Discussion. Discussion. Public comments. Public comments. All right, Ms. Patty.
Harvey Bowman. Alicia Devins.
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Ann Harbison. Joe Kicklack.
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom.
Yes.
Eva Madison.
Yes.
Sue Madison.
Yes.
Joel Maxwell.
Yes.
Butch Pond.
Yes.
Fred Roush.
Yes.
Bill Usry.
Yes.
And Daniel Balls.
Yes.
All right, and that one passes.
Mr. Chairman.
J.P. Madison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is this another business or is it?
We didn't really deal with the consent agenda after I pulled the minutes out, so I would move that we approve the committee report.
We did.
We did?
I read both.
You read them, but we didn't vote.
Because we voted on the adoption of the agenda to include the consent agenda with the change that you made.
To the
You
minutes.
still have to vote
Right, and you did.
We did it
on the minutes.
on the adoption of the agenda.
On both of it.
Yes. Ms. Patty, you have that captured.
I thought we were just voting on the minutes. Oh, well, I mean, if,
I have a question now.
Did we do the adoption of the agenda with the approval?
why don't we just vote on it anyway to be safe? I did. Make a motion, we
Okay.
approve the committee report.
Move to second. All in favor? Okay, it's in. Those opposed? All right. Thank you, Ms. Patty. Ms. J.P. Madison.
We still have to vote on the consent agenda, and I think we should vote on it separately. Just approving the agenda, I don't think constitutes passing the consent agenda. I'm also concerned that why committee reports are on the consent agenda, because we've never approved committee reports before, and I don't actually think we gave any committee reports. So I don't know what we just approved. Anyway, just seems a little unusual to me.
So your consent agenda was part of the adoption of the agenda, but we just did a vote, so that's been approved. Go ahead, J.P. Madison.
Are you through? Thank you, Mr. Judge. And I was the one really pushing to have a consent agenda to save time and expedite some of these mundane, routine, gotta-do kind of issues. And so far, I have to admit, I've been wrong. It has been something of a disaster. And for instance, last month, I was royally confused by the fact that we had a substitution for an item in the consent agenda when I thought only items that came out of committee unanimously with the recommendation they go on the consent agenda could be on it. It never occurred to me that staff could substitute something. So I think this one needs a little bit more work before we put it on another agenda. Just my, and I want to thank J.P. Lundstrom for having that wisdom ahead of time. Thank you.
I just want to say when Justice Madison, Sue Madison, made the plan for the consent agenda, in one of our committee meetings, it came up that there might be questions from the public or statements on these agendas that were in the consent agenda. So I think that's why the committee reports were added to the consent agenda in case people had questions, to give the proper chairperson of such committee time to explain what was actually going on. Thank you.
J.P. Harbison.
Well, I'm going to move on. When we have a feasibility study, I wish that the Quorum Court members would be given the opportunity to come by and pick up those studies so you don't read about it in the paper and you know what's going on. So in the future, I mean, you know, that was, 30 pages long. So, you know, just a call from Patty or something, you know, to come by and pick it up because, you know, most of us 30 pages to print out on our computers at home also. So, but anyway.
Thank you, Mr. J.P. Harbison. And from time to time, and I don't know which JPs, if you need to come by and pick up your packet, Ms. Patty would be happy to get that. But I do know she emails all of that out prior to, so everybody would have had that in their email. But again, if you don't have connections or signals, what have you, you would have missed that. And so, Ms. Patty is your point of contact, and we will have those obviously readily available. We definitely wanted to get that out early enough so people did have time to go through it before we got to the meeting. So, any other business? Any other business? Entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. Second. Properly second. All in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned.